Welcome. I know many of you, but some I don't. I'm Will Lindesay, I'm Chief Exec of HVOS. Welcome to everyone here today and online, and a special welcome to our Action for Deafness interpreters. That's our first session today. This community partnership, we've had 5 events, and we've got our sixth one today, and we're going to be 1 year old in September. So I think that's something to celebrate at the next meeting. I think we've got about 70 people with us today. We've got a really busy morning and agenda, got lots of topical discussions and some presentations. There are lots of slides. So I'll make an apology for a start when I give my little update. I'm going to quickly rattle through my bit on the volunteering strategy. But I'm delighted to say we've got Mandy doing an update from the Southwide Development Trust, and we're always grateful for you hosting us here at Kindle, Mandy. Rob's going to give us an update on the preventing vulnerabilities work. We're going to look at the next steps of what we do around our inequalities planning, and Emily and Kelly are going to do something. Emily's not going to do something. Kelly's going to do an update on the Talk Community website and directory for us, and we've got a little workshop on that. There's also going to be a real good opportunity for everyone to carry on with the networking, which is one of the most invaluable parts of this. On your tables are these little yellow post-its. I don't know how we're going to do this online, but what we're trying to do at each of the networks, we've invited people to give little updates on what they're doing. What we want to do here is, if you do want to give us a little update and some feedback on the partnership, if you could complete those and then hand them in as a box somewhere, orange box over there. The other thing to say is we're going to be doing some community engagement online. So it's really important, if you can, if people could register using the Wi-Fi code here, because that's the tool that we're going to be using later on. I think that's, by way of introduction, all I was going to say. So what I'd like to do is just give you all, if you've all seen the agenda, just quickly move on to an update on several matters that we've discussed at a number of meetings. The first is, as you're all aware, one of the key aspects of the community partnership is to be this conduit, two-way information between our community and voluntary sector, and not just public, but private and other public bodies. Over the last few months, we've invited expressions of interest to another number of roles. Up there, I'm delighted to say we filled a number of places from what I think is our membership and those that have been come along to these events. We're delighted that Steve is again here. Steve has been appointed as the Health and Wellbeing Board representative, so congratulations. As we work down, we've got some expressions of interest we're still considering around children and the Safeguarding Board. And Karen Hall, who many of you will know, is going to continue on an interim basis on the Adults Board. We're also delighted that Katie, who has given us a number of updates, has kindly taken on the place on the ICS Academy, which is very much around training and development of capacity within our sector. So we're very pleased Katie's taken that on. And I think it's something I announced at the last meeting. Julia Neo, Age UK, Herefordshire and Worcestershire is the Partnership Assembly rep at that strategic level for us. We have one place that we had no expressions of interest for, and if anyone's interested in community safety, we'd be delighted to hear from people that would be willing to go along on behalf of the partnership, and as we've done with all these representative roles, to come back, be that conduit, use us as a network, and feeding not obviously just your own views, but the main thing is that we act collectively, and the people that are appointed to these positions have got a mandate from the sector to do that. And again, the Inequalities Collaborative, we've got some expressions of interest that I think Christine and I are still working through. The second element, I quickly looked through everyone's slides. What I want to avoid is people thinking we've got 50 odd slides here. But one of the key strands we discussed at the last meeting was the need for Herefordshire to develop a strategy around volunteering in the county. We had a great discussion last time around, and what we agreed is HFOS would take some of those thoughts away and ideally organise a working group, task group. And I introduced Nicola Reid, our volunteer lead, who is going to be developing that work. I don't want to go through much of this detail because lots of the attendees will be aware of some of the drivers here around the state of the sector report and other impacts that we all talked about at the last meeting. But these are some of the things, and I don't know if people had these shared.
Yeah, they're with the agenda.
Yeah. What we need to make sure is that we're properly telling the story here, but you'll be familiar with lots of this context. But what we've started to develop with the input of some people who've expressed an interest is a vision for volunteering in the county. Very much picking up on the strands that we've talked about over the last few meetings, and it's very much about it being community-led, us looking at new ways of developing volunteering, perhaps doing things in new ways, and it also needs to be involving a lot of other different networks, which I'll go on to. But we've basically come up with, and what we're going to do is we're going to seek further engagement, because the main thing here is that we all own this. So this isn't HFOS saying this is the county's volunteering strategy. We've now got a working group where I think we've got a couple of dates in mind that Nicola is going to reconvene the group. But there's a couple of strands that we're now looking at. Around trying to pick up on what people have said, very much around more corporate volunteering, new markets, new ways of doing things, which picks up on the things that we've not only learned from the state of the sector report, but from other networks we've been engaged with, particularly around the business community. The second one is new responsive models, and we've started to develop this in the county already. So not a challenge to the traditional models of volunteering, but what else can we do around what we are delivering together? Some will be familiar of the HEART team, which is very much a response to something that emerges, and this is something we talked about last week. As a team in HFOS, and actually Emily and others, we saw this work quite well, I think, with the Commonwealth Baton Relay, where there was a call for people to help with volunteering around that. I think we had over 30 people quickly volunteered to help with that. So I think it starts to show that there are people willing to help out, and the term volunteering is something I'll come on to, but that actually we need to be a bit more innovative. So I think the future model will be looking at additional ways that we can involve people. We've picked up around the other partnership work, and certainly there's lots of opportunities around emergency services, schools, colleges and health that I think is going to be a strand too. And the final one worth a particular mention is the involvement of young people. There was a very strong following at the last meeting that actually there's a real pool, a talent base here, and as a county we want to develop that much more. And that includes the support networks needed to enable it. In terms of approach, one thing that's come up, and I don't want to be provocative here, but there's a discussion around the term volunteering. For some, that has a very fixed term, and it's something we're all familiar with. For others, there's not an association with them being a volunteer. So I think as the strategy emerges, we need to perhaps look at, as a county, about how we approach this terminology around volunteering. And I think however we do that, it's very much about how people can contribute their skills, how we can use the assets and experiences of people to engage them. And part of that will be looking at I think what is emerging strongly is a need to do some sort of recognition events and to celebrate the work that volunteers continue to contribute. So we've talked about perhaps there have been various iterations of recognition awards in the county. You'd be familiar with the Pride of Herefordshire and other things, Volunteer of the Year awards. I think there's a chance to work together, that's the key bit, to work together towards something for the county, perhaps in 2023, which could be, some of the thoughts are the culmination of a county-wide event that's fed by local activity, perhaps on a local level, then a market town level, but works all the way through. But whatever is done is complementary to what everyone wants to do. So something for us to think about. What we're also trying to think through is, at the moment, as I mentioned at the last meeting, NCVO is developing this vision for volunteering. So what Nicola's tried to do, and Karen at HFOS, is to try and to reflect some of that national thinking. I think that's how we'd like to see it, so that we're doing our own thing, but it can also be seen as part of the national picture. And I think there's value in that for Herefordshire, because if we then make representation, particularly around our rural perspective, it's quite helpful for us to link into what's going on nationally. So if we can get a framework that sort of aligns to what NCVO and NAVCA and others are doing, I think that can help with some of the work that we do on the national stage. We've presented some initial thoughts to the Talk Parish meetings, and again, these are some of the things that are coming out around leadership, equity, and inclusion, and they really reinforce some of the things that we again have talked about here, including links to other things. So things like the local initiatives around social prescribing, and the whole sort of community approach, including the invaluable role that councillors, parish councillors and other community leaders play. So I think it will be very much a whole community approach that we want to see developed through the community partnership. So that's how we see it emerging, us as part of this team Herefordshire all together. And again, there's some other examples of this collaboration. We held a very successful event, which is ongoing through the Talk Community Programme with the High Sheriff last year, and it helped us engage new people that we had no comprehension of, particularly around the business community. And again, all the work that is being developed through the local community hubs and the Talk Community Programme, we clearly want to develop that further over the next few years. And again, the experimentation bit picks up on some of the things that people have been saying about new ways of doing things. Try it, volunteers weeks, volunteers fairs. There've been successful things on a local level that Jane and others could say in Ross, like volunteer charity markets and other things. What can we do around these that drawing people that perhaps aren't on a day-to-day basis involved with the sector, but we can start to engage them in their daily lives, that perhaps they then become part of our network and contributors in the future. So that's some of the initial thinking since the last meeting. As I said, the key thing at the bottom is that we all need to be part of this. So Nicola will be organising another meeting of interested parties. And we see this very much being the community partnership being the custodian of what we do together. And we want to test out some of these plans with you, including the things that I've mentioned, the key strands. So that's as far as we've got. Hopefully that tells the story and it chimes with some of the things you've inputted at the last meeting. I think what we now need to do is continue to invite the expressions of interest from you to take part in that. And again, Nicola is very much our pivot for that. So Nicola's sat there. If there are people that would like to inform this work, in particular, come along to the next task group, we can start working this up. And then underneath those main strands, there's clearly now a need to get quite a targeted action plan that's quite smart about what's happening when under those strands. But we didn't want to get too far down that road until we came back to you with an update. So 10 minutes ahead of time, we might need it by 12:30. Are there any questions? Wow.
Any questions on Zoom?
Okay. I'm going to grab that moment to move us on because